Today, we're taking a trip through the dense, ancient woods of one of Maine's remote coastal communities, Westport Island. This is a place of undeniable rugged beauty, a land of granite shoreline, thick forests, and tidal estuaries that seem to hold the secrets of centuries past. But for those who know the island's true character, the beauty is often overshadowed by an unnerving stillness, a deep-seated feeling of being watched, and tales of disoriented hikers and unexplained things in the woods. The locals don't talk about a single haunted house. They talk about the haunted woods, a vast, tangled interior that has absorbed the energy of every isolated life, every failed settlement, and every maritime tragedy that has washed up on its shores. What lies hidden beneath the moss and pine needles of this remote Maine island? And why do some claim that if you wander too far off the trail, the island itself simply won't let you leave? And what does any of this have to do with me personally? Find out only on this episode of The Daily Strange. Hello, strangers, and welcome to the final episode of The Daily Strange. This has been a month-long video blitz of the paranormal, focused on the supernatural, cryptids, and spooky stuff like that. I am your host, John F. Murs, author, actor, adventurer, and I hope you have enjoyed these daily video drops. Today, we're going to talk about another personal anecdote of mine wrapped into factual and historic details of the area. When I was in my late teens, my family started building a vacation home on Westport Island in Maine. By the time I was in my early 20s, it was done, and my parents would spend almost every weekend up there. The first time I went, something very interesting and unusual happened. But that's getting ahead of the story. For the moment, let me give you some of the history on the area and some of the strange things that have happened to other people. Then we'll get back to my story. Westport Island, Maine is located in Lincoln County, nestled between the Sheepscot and the Kennebec rivers. Its isolation is key to its lore. The island was settled early in Maine's colonial history, initially incorporated around 1828 after being known for centuries as Jeremysquam Island. But Indigenous peoples called it home for millennia before that, giving the island a rich history. Like many remote settlements, life was incredibly hard. The woods, which make up the vast majority of the island's interior, were not a resource to be enjoyed, but a harsh, unforgiving barrier. Historically, this area was a key location for shipbuilding, fishing, and logging. The thick forests provided the raw materials, but they also hid the dangers. Accounts from the 18th and 19th centuries speak of extreme isolation, accidents in the logging camps, and the relentless peril of the sea. Whenever a fishing vessel or a trading ship was lost in a storm just offshore, a common occurrence in the treacherous Gulf of Maine, the island's dark, rocky coves would often become the final resting place for the wreckage, and sometimes the bodies themselves. These tragedies, layered over decades, form the emotional and historical bedrock of the island's ghostly reputation. Crucially, the history of land ownership is complex. The interior was once densely wooded, a point of tension between early settlers and the indigenous people of the region. The feeling that the ground itself is cursed or holds a memory of original violent displacement is a common element in the folklore of many remote New England forests. On Westport, this translates into stories of disorientation, where well-known paths suddenly seem unfamiliar and landmarks inexplicably disappear, leading to the belief that the woods have a will of their own. Unlike a specific house or mansion with a single named ghost, the haunting of Westport Island's woods is largely attributed to residual energy and the ghosts of the lost. Local hikers and modern-day residents who venture into the interior, particularly around certain aspects of the island, often report strange incidents that defy logical explanation. One recurring claim is that of a type of phantom fog. Even on a clear, sunny day, hikers report hitting patches of woods where the air instantly turns cold and a localized dense fog rolls in, completely obscuring their vision and muffling sound. This disorienting experience is often accompanied by the sound of disembodied whispers or faint, distorted voices that seem to call out names or even fragments of old sea shanties. In every documented case, once the person manages to push past the fog, the area immediately behind them is clear and sunny again, leaving no physical evidence of the sudden change. More chilling are the tales of physical disorientation. Several instances have been reported by hunters and longtime residents of the island finding themselves walking in circles despite using compasses and GPS. One notable occasion in the late 1990s, a man spent an entire night lost in a section of woods he claimed he had walked 1,000 times. He was found the next morning, less than a quarter of a mile away from his truck, shivering and convinced that he had been deliberately turned around by an unseen force that kept whispering to him from the trees. The phenomenon of these shadow figures is also frequently mentioned. These are described not as full apparitions, but as a brief dark movement, a quick flash of black out of the corner of the eye, like a person stepping behind a massive pine tree, only for the tree to be completely bare when the witness turns to look. These figures are often attributed to the restless spirits of lost sailors, loggers who died in accidents, or perhaps the displaced energies from the ancient untamed land itself. The deep, heavy silence of the woods is ironically what makes them so unnerving. When sound returns, it is often something unnatural, a single heavy thud where no branch fell, or the rhythmic sound of a distant unseen axe. So with that bit of history to the area, we'll return to my own experience. As I mentioned, this was the first time I'd gone up to the new house. My father loved this island and spoke often about seeing seals lounging on the rocks by the shore and how much he was looking forward to painting when he had more time. And it really was a beautiful place. I thought the island was gorgeous. My first instinct upon arrival was not to go into the house, but actually take a walk through the woods that surrounded the land that our house was built on. And there were a handful of other homes in our area. All of us were part of a development that was focused on conservation. It was a bright, sunny day in autumn, and I'd been in the service at this point for a year or two, probably closer to 2 years. Land navigation wasn't an issue for me. I knew my way around the woods. As I got further away from the house, I started following a small game trail. And at one point, I'd paused just to take in the scenery and kind of, looked all around, including back the way I'd come. Except it didn't look the way it should have. The game trail that I'd been on was suddenly not there. And I know this sounds utterly and completely bizarre, but it was simply gone. It was still bright and sunny, so I figured, all right, no big deal. We'll look for waypoints and all that jazz. It was maybe 4 in the afternoon at this point. Plenty of time. I backtracked for a bit, but nothing looked familiar, so I started running through my checklist of ways to reestablish direction of travel, etc. But even as I started looking at the sun's position in the sky, the time of day, I was getting more and more confused. The island itself is relatively flat, so it wasn't as though there was some sort of a high point or a ridge line that I could have shot for. The woods looked exactly the same in every direction. I mean, I'd never experienced this before. And as I'm picking my way through the woods, I noticed it was getting colder in the area around me. The sun was still out, but the air just felt different. And I felt this growing unease in my stomach, like there was an unnatural stillness around me. The animals had all gone quiet, no birds, no squirrels, just this weird silence of everything, except me picking my way through the woods. I felt a breeze come at me from the left, and there was the vaguest hint of salt to it, so I decided to head in that direction. I traveled for what felt like 400 yards when suddenly I narrowly missed stepping right off of a cliff, roughly 20 feet up from the ocean below. Now, we're not talking about crashing surf or anything like that. It was a calm bay, but the suddenness of it scared the crap out of me. If I hadn't been paying attention, if I hadn't been just slowly picking my way through, if I'd been convinced I was still on a trail and just striding through the forest, I could have easily stepped right off that rock and fallen into the water. But I didn't. From that point, however, I was able to thread my way around the coast and reacquire a trail that eventually led me back to the house. When I got back, my father had a map of the area, and I figured out that over the course of maybe an hour or so, I'd somehow managed to get really far away, heading inland, and yet somehow wound up at the coast. I couldn't explain it. It was perhaps the only time I ever felt really and truly lost and confused in the woods, and none of my training really helped. And there's a sad postscript to this story. Tragedy struck every family that owned a home in that development. Cancer took the life of the wife of one guy. Another family had to suddenly declare bankruptcy. Another family went through a horrible divorce. And most personally, my own father would suddenly pass within a year of that home being ready to live in. I don't know what was in those woods. Maybe it was the site of an ancient burial ground that had been disturbed. Maybe it was the restless spirit of someone who had died nearby. But the woods of Westport Island stand as a chilling example of how history, isolation, and tragedy can leave an indelible psychic or even supernatural mark on a landscape. For those who experience things like me, the forest was not merely trees and dirt. It was a profound memory, a vast, silent repository for the lost souls of Maine's rugged past. And maybe, just maybe, something even darker. Okay, that's going to do it for this, the final episode of The Daily Strange. I have had a wonderful time sharing a video each and every day with you, and especially these last two episodes where I've shared a bit of my own personal spooky stories with you, which I hope you enjoyed. If you've enjoyed the content, please be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bells so you know when I upload new videos. And please be sure to encourage your friends and family to subscribe. The more, the better. Thank you for watching and listening. Happy Halloween.